Hey everyone, welcome back to the Authority Hacker Podcast. In today's episode, I have a treat for you because we have one of our most popular guests of all time, Jon Dykstra from Faststack's blog. And Jon Dykstra is really well liked in the community because he shares live case studies of his own sites, and actually his biggest site just hit $100,000 per month revenue, which is really impressive. And actually to celebrate that, he is actually giving $200 off his course bundle where he shows exactly how he does it, so you can find all the info in the description and on the link below. So in this interview, because we already have an interview, which I recommend you go and check, click on the card above there if you haven't seen the first interview, I try to focus on topics that we haven't explored last time, and we're also focusing on things that he has done since the last time we've talked. So the first thing that he's done is he started flipping websites, so I wanted to know how he does it, how it changed his way of building sites, and what he recommends you guys do to make more money from flipping websites. The second thing is he started doing a case study on age domains using Odys Global, so I wanted to just catch up on that and understand how it's going for him, and kind of talk about the difference of starting a website on an age domain versus starting a website on a fresh domain. And finally, one of the things that I was personally excited to talk to him about was his content production process, because Jon creates a lot of content for his sites, to be honest, more than we do. And so I was quite interested to understand how he does this, so maybe I can take something away and you can take something away from the way he does it. So we talk about content providers he uses and how he manages freelancers, project management, and quality control, and all these things that are, maybe boring to people who don't run websites, but actually very important to people who do run websites. So if you're excited for this interview, don't forget to click on the subscribe button if you are on YouTube and like us, because it really helps us reach more people with our podcast and videos. And without further ado, let's get started with the interview. Hey everyone, so Jon was one of our most popular podcasts. I think it was last year. Literally, I think I checked on YouTube, there's 18,000 views on your podcast, which is pretty good, plus the audio downloads. So I think in total, we're probably close to 30K people who listened to this interview that we did together. People were really impressed with your success with your sites, etc. And you're probably one of the most transparent persons in the industry. So thank you for coming back to the podcast, and thank you for the audience, because I know they really enjoyed your podcast last time. So welcome back, Jon.
Well, thanks for having me, Gael. It's good to be back.
And one thing that happened since last time, I think, the way I kind of promoted your interview was taking the income report number you had on your last report, which I checked just before, it was $71,000 something, but I put the exact number or something. And now you actually broke $100,000 per month on that one website, right? So I just wanted to say congrats, actually. I've actually never gotten 100K from just affiliate and advertising. I've gotten it from selling products, etc. But actually, congratulations on that. It's definitely a big achievement.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's been a good year. Yeah, I'm very happy about that.
Yeah. Before we start with the interview, though, it's you have been releasing a bunch of training as well, so I thought you wanted to mention that to the audience. So go ahead, let them know what the offer is.
No, I appreciate it. I have it's a course bundle. It's evolved over the years. I keep adding to it. It basically sets out A to Z what I do. And essentially it's content based sites, highly informational type content, monetized mostly with ads, some affiliate stuff. And it just sets out what I've done to build up a small portfolio of high earning niche sites. And that's the course, and it's constantly evolving. But, as we'll talk throughout here, there's also foundations in this business, which really boils down to content. And I'll get into that for sure.
Yeah, I like your approach. I like your ads focused approach. I think it's a different spin on what we do, but it's definitely a very successful one. It's one that I'm actually just buying more and more into, to be honest. We have some projects now I'm looking at where I'm am I even going to bother with affiliate marketing focus first? Or I definitely want to do so. There's some projects we're looking at right now that might follow onto what you're doing. So I recommend people go check it out. We'll put the URL below so people can check it out. Description on YouTube, and you can go and check Jon's course. But one thing I read on your blog and I wanted to start the interview on is that last time we did the interview, you mentioned that you never sold your websites and you didn't seem very interested in the idea of flipping websites, but it's something that has changed since last time, because I was reading your blog and you mentioned how you sold some sites and it had a profound impact on how you are thinking about the business. So I just wanted you to tell us what happened and how it changed your approach to building websites.
Yeah, well, it was about a year ago, I launched a handful of new sites. Actually, I split up a larger site into a series of smaller sites. I tried everything in the kitchen sink concept for a large site. It just wasn't working, so I broke it up and redirected it. And the traffic was pretty good, and those sites were growing. As individual sites, not so much altogether. So then I ended up with, I believe it was 6 or 7 websites. And, financing and growing 7 sites at once was very difficult. And I managed to get them to a point where they were earning well, and they were good sites, and I liked them. But I couldn't, really reinvest every month the amount that was necessary, or devote the time to each site that was necessary. So I decided to try selling them, and I had never sold a site in the past. So I've always launched them, grown them for the intention of holding onto them and growing them for the long term. So it was really interesting, and I sold them, and they sold all successfully fairly quickly for multiples I was happy with, or at prices I was happy with. And it was neat to see the exit side of this business, because I've always just focused on the monthly revenue and trying to grow that. And that's difficult because you're constantly reinvesting every month. And so, sites are losing money for many, many months, depending on how much content you put in, but they would lose money, and then eventually you try to get them to where they're profitable every month. But when you sell them, it's a nice, it's almost like this big bonus at the end, the sale. So that was cool, and that kind of opened my eyes to when you're looking at the long time return on investment with these sites, is they don't actually have to earn a whole lot of money every month to realize a sizable chunk of revenue coming in. So that was nice. And so I'm now actually building one site for sure, probably 2 or 3, with the intention of selling not within the next few months, but definitely within the next year or 2. And so I've tweaked my overall publishing strategy with investing in sites with the intention to selling them, not 10 or 15 years down the road when I want to cash out, but during the interim as part of the business model.
Yeah, actually, we just sold one of our sites today, actually, so that's why I was interested in asking you about this. But it's definitely an approach that I also wasn't buying into very much at the beginning, and after we sold a site for quite a bit of money, then I realized the payout was nice, and also I looked at it as a way to de-risk some of the stuff. So the first site we sold, for example, it was because, to be frank, I had found some really good keywords that most of the competition didn't really understand the commercial intent behind. But I know that as soon as they will put us in Ahrefs or something, they will all start running after us.
Yeah,
exactly. And I was like, we didn't have the authority. We had good authority, but not the authority of the big guys that would definitely be able to run after us. So sometimes it feels like a way to kind of stabilize and kind of secure some of your earnings, and then you just you can maybe put that money somewhere else. And so, it has been something that we've been looking at recently as well. And I always tell the story of Health on Mission. A lot of people know that story, but I literally had that discussion with Mark 2 months before it crashed from the core medic update, wrong time, wrong place, about selling it. I convinced him not to sell it. And I wish I started selling sites a bit earlier, I'd probably be quite a bit richer, to be honest.
I had the same thing back before the first Penguin. I had an offer, a 6-figure offer for a site. I said, no, this thing's going to grow tons. So been there.
Yeah, I think most people who have been in this industry for a while have somewhat of a similar story. You don't always win in this kind of stuff, and I think it's important to say that as well. But you can still win overall. My question to you following that was: would you ever sell your main site?
Oh, I eventually will.
100K.
Yeah. So, I mean, I will eventually sell it. No plans right now to sell it, but eventually. The interesting process is the series of sites I sold, they were all smaller sites. They were all, with the exception of one, which took a lot longer to sell, but 6, I think it was 5 or 6, whatever, smaller sites under $100,000. They go very quickly. There's a lot larger pool of buyers who want a site, in the $25,000 to $60,000 range. So they go quickly. So it's not a lot of hassle to sell a site like that. But when you're looking at selling a big site, now you and Mark have sold sites for a lot more. The whole process is a lot longer, at least at least from what I've heard from people. I actually did one time attempt to sell my biggest site. I'm sure glad I didn't actually, but it was still valued at quite a number. And, the process was endless, and it never did ultimately sell. And you do all this work every month, getting all the numbers, and obviously a buyer is going to want a ton of due diligence, as they should, but it puts a lot of work on the seller, right? So it's a hassle.
Yeah. You have to put things in order as well. Like I found that, the way you run a business sometimes is not in a sellable state. So like it's hard to transfer, or like it's a mess, like your content organization is a mess, or like some stuff. For example, the site we saw this week, the people cared a lot about Core Web Vitals, just because, it's kind of the flavor of the month right now.
Yeah.
And that site did not pass the Core Web Vitals. Let me be honest here. And it was a bit of a hassle. It's like we actually had to do a little bit of work to make things a bit better, etc. So sometimes you end up having, it takes you sometimes a month or two to get things in order. It's from the accounting point of view as well, we found. To actually be able to sell your site. But okay, that is interesting. So now you're going to be building to sell a lot more, right?
I am. I mean, there's only so many I could do. I don't know if I would do 6 or 7 at the same time again. That was just a sort of happy accident that evolved. I didn't plan any of it, frankly. But going forward now, I'm being a little more deliberate about it. So launching, a few sites. I think I'd like to get them to the point where they're more than, the $25,000 or $50,000 sale mark. But still try to hopefully get a good number inside 2 years, 3 years would be nice.
Yeah, it is definitely doable. And we've done it. Like the public case study we did on the sell was like, mid 6 figures, and it was 18 months old, the website.
That's amazing. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, it's like they don't all go that well, right? But like this one did quite well, and so it's definitely possible. This was on high-paying offers, though, high-paying FA offers on advertising, because you need such large volume of traffic. I mean, I'm sure you can, to be honest. Like with like Pinterest and all this stuff that you're doing, it's quite possible, to be honest. And talking about new site, my transition here was actually to your next case study, because you're doing a case study on a Odys.Global domain that you bought. And I'm really glad you're doing this case study, because it's a case study I asked Spencer from Niche Process to do. We don't do like too much public case study, but he was asking us like, oh, what should I do? And I told him, a lot of people would like to hear about like how do age domains do compared to new domains. And so it's an opportunity for me to ask you, first of all, to recap the case study for people, and ask you about the expired domains, etc. So can you tell people about the case study? Sorry.
Absolutely. It's I'm actually very excited about the site. I have never done it's buying an aged domain, which was these are sites that they were sites in the past. They aren't now. What Odys does is they look for these, they buy the domains, they vet them, and then they obviously sell them for a profit. So I've been reading. I'm sure you have, and lots of people watching and listening have read about some of the benefits of, basically being able to get traffic from SEO a lot faster with an aged domain. So I thought, why not? Let's give it a shot. I think, it's a bit riskier in that, like, if the domain isn't good and no content ranks, you've shelled out the money. They're not that cheap, and you put all this time in it, and you end up nowhere, and it takes you 6 to 12 months to realize this. So that's the risk. But I've talked to other people who've done this, and they've had great success with it. And so I thought I'd give it a shot. So basically, let's see, I've sort of worked out an arrangement with Odys. And so I got a domain, and I'm working on the site. I'm excited, not just because it's an aged domain, though. I have found a really good niche that I think is an excellent fit for me. And I have found in the past that not all niches are good for every person. Like I just sort of have a preference for various types of websites and various niches, and I think everybody does. And sometimes I've jumped into niches which just not a good fit for me, just the way my workflow, my interests, and all of that. And we've all read about, oh, that site was a big success. It covers this niche. Well, then, anybody can do it. Well, it's not really true, at least for me. So I'm excited because I found something I think it's going to work really well. Of course, that's assuming the whole age domain thing works. Looks like it's working. It's already getting traffic. It's a couple months in. And so we'll see how it goes. I'm putting a big effort into it. I am building this with the intention to sell it within a few years, hopefully, but we'll see how it goes. Now, I think the potential traffic is enormous based on keyword research. So I got lots and lots of keywords. That's one thing I like or look for in a site is that there is a massive pool of fairly easy to rank keywords. They don't have to be like super easy. There could be some competition, but it's definitely doable. But there needs to be tons of them, and because I like to invest in a lot of content. Yeah. And so this niche definitely fits the bill. The downside is I think I don't have ads on the site yet. That's coming very soon. I don't think the ad revenue is going to be all that lucrative per 1,000 visitors. So that's going to be a big downside, but I'll have to wait and see.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, like, you've started new domains, you've started age domains. Like, it's hard to like put numbers on these things, but how does it feel? Google picks up the content on the age domain versus the new domain in terms of like, I guess, speed,
I would say it was probably within 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I've got over 100 published pieces of content on that site inside 2 months. So I'm really, it's like a blitz. I'm doing a lot. So I think I checked this morning. I have about 270 keywords that are registering in Ahrefs, which means they're now in the top 100. So that's in about 2 months, which based on starting from scratch, that's pretty good. Looks like the whole age thing is working out, because I don't think, had I put the same amount of content on a new domain, would I get that many keywords already registering in Ahrefs? It'd probably be more like the 6, maybe the 8 or 9 month mark. Now, the traffic's still low because most of these keywords are, position 50, position 40, but it's happening. Things are happening. So it's really too early, I would say. Like right now, I'm doing this ongoing write-up on the whole case study at fatsexblog.com. I think I call it something like my Odys experience or something like that with age domains. So it's really too early to conclude that this is definitely going to be a huge advantage. But, I think at the 12-month mark, I'll be able to see. I think that'll, you look at the traffic chart. Hopefully it's like hockey stick, fingers crossed. We'll see.
Yeah. I think it's going to do quite well. I had a question, though. It's that my problem with buying age domains and looking at these marketplaces, etc., is that sometimes like I pick a niche and I find a domain, but, it's the domain of like, let's say I want to do just a blog, and it's like the domain of like an old product in that niche or something. It has a bit of a weird name, etc. So is the name kind of like in phase with the site you're building, or is it a little bit weird, a little bit off? Because that's usually my problem with expired domains or age domains.
Yeah, it's a great point. Actually, it's pretty spot on. And it's even more spot on with the content that was on it in years past. I checked it all up. Well, actually, Odys is cool. They'll send you all the links, to pages on Wayback Machine as to what content was on there. So you can see right away, like what types of topics. So the topics are spot on. The name is quite good. So yeah, I would say it's an excellent fit right now.
Okay, but it's something that I find complicated when you're like shopping for domains. Usually, like you will find domains in the niche you want, but they're kind of like, the name of a weird product or something. It's like my plan actually. It's like I have some projects going on with expired domains that I'm not necessarily sharing publicly, but the plan for me is to kind of like get them going for a year and then going for a full rebranding with full 301 redirect to a $10 domain that's more branded.
Right.
And then, but like give it a bit of a life first and show to Google, like, look, okay, this age domain, there's stuff happening. And then when it's getting momentum, then just do as when a brand rebrands, like for example, TransferWise just rebranded to Wise, for example, they redirected their whole site. And I'm sure their rankings, they will be shaky a bit, but they'll come back to what they were. So that's kind of my plan with this, but I need to validate this in real life right now. It's work in progress as well, which is why I'm just asking questions at this point. Yeah. Will you buy more expired domains based on your experience, both for new sites, but also for redirecting to your websites? Like, would you do that? Because I know you
I
split
would,
domains, but
if this works out as well as I hope, yes, absolutely. For new websites, I doubt I would get into the buying them with the sole intention of just doing a redirect. I don't think I would do that. I like the
okay.
idea. They cost thousands of dollars. Well, anywhere from
Yeah,
like
yeah.
700 is the low end up to 5,000+. I think I would buy them solely for the purpose of building out a site on them.
Yeah, so I've picked up some sites for redirects, but I didn't pick them up from Odys because it's a bit expensive, as you say. I picked them up from like GoDaddy auctions. For example, I use a tool called Spamzilla. And it just has like a lot of filters for multiple marketplaces for like drop domains, etc. And you do find some good deals. Like I found, DR35 sites or something that I've paid like $400 for or something. And so with like some really good links. I mean, I had links from like The Verge and even New York Times, etc., from sites I picked up from there. And so I've done it for redirects. It's not as powerful as it sounds. Like, you pick a site that has like links from New York Times, you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah, you'll get a boost, but it doesn't feel as good. And so that's why I wanted to ask you if you would consider doing something like this, basically. So you get a boost, but it doesn't look as good as if you like the New York Times did link to your website, basically, in terms of ranking boost from what I've seen. But one thing that you've hinted at is that you're going very hard in terms of content for that case study site, right? From your site, I've read that you've published 100 blog posts in 2 months, I think.
It's about that, maybe 115, 120 now. Yeah, daily.
Yeah, that's a lot. And so it's one of the things that I'm always like scratching my head when I'm like reading your content. I'm like, how the hell do you output so much content? And we did not really cover that last time. We talked more about monetization. We talked more about like keyword research, etc. And that's something I really want to dive into, like how you get so much content done on your sites, because you're managing multiple sites and all your sites have a ton of pages. And it's something that, I'm very impressed by. And so I wanted to start very basic. Do you manage your content, first of all? Like, what does your average day in the life looks like when you're working?
Yeah, well, I used to manage all the content. I hired somebody recently who I'm training and basically he's up and running. So he's now actually being like sort of the last stop with quality control. So he's sort of taking that. But until recently, I did manage it. I still do most of the keyword research. That's sort of my, month. I do that maybe a couple times a month. And other than that, once the keywords are added to a Google sheet that everybody else who's producing content, be it Writeraccess agency or any writers who are working directly with me, they all have access to these various spreadsheets. They pick up the topics and go with it. And then it gets handed off to VAs who then format it, put it on the site, schedule them out. And then head VA does a quality check, and then now this project manager I hired, he's doing the final quality check, making sure everything's properly done, and then it gets published. So that's the workflow in a nutshell. So really, it's just a matter of setting that up and paying for the content. I don't write at all. But I also should clarify that it seems like a lot of content, but it's actually not that much compared to a lot of other sites. Like my largest site gets 2 new posts a day, okay, which isn't a ton. I mean, it's good, but they're long posts and they're fairly involved posts. And then the other sites would get, I got one small site I'm kicking along that might get 5 or 10 a month. And then this new site I'm really investing big in. Like that's anywhere from 1 to 4 per day. Kind of depends where the workflow ends up. I mean, as soon as they're ready, we're publishing. So, I mean, I know people who are publishing 20, 30 a day. So I wouldn't qualify myself as like publishing a ton of content, but I mean, it's enough to grow for sure. And it boils down to workflow and how much. I mean, if you look at my income reports, you can see the content investment is pretty heavy every month. But again, there's people who are investing $100,000 a month just in content alone. I'm not doing anywhere close to that.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you have writers that you work with, and you have Writeraccess as an agency. Is that how your content team is split? Is that like, or is there other sources of content for your websites?
That's it right now. Yeah. So. I've hired some freelance writers directly off ProBlogger job board. Great place to go find excellent writers. And so I have 4 right now working with me across the different sites. And then I also get a lot of content from Writeraccess. I work with a content manager there who then manages my, I guess I've got like a favorites list of writers on there that have cobbled together over the years, and then she manages the content with them.
I actually checked their website. I mean, I heard about them, but I never really looked deep. But like I was reading your blog, then I checked them out. There's no pricing or anything. I guess there's like pretty high minimum amount of content you need to order to work with them, right?
Not really. They have a monthly fee just to access the account. Although AppSumo right now, well, at least they did. I think they still have.
Oh, really? Okay.
Lifetime. Anyways, the cost I think ranges anywhere. The lowest would be either 2 or 3 cents per word, which is pretty in line with like most other providers. They're not going to go lower than that. Like I actually, my minimum is 4 cents. I often will spend 6. And there are some writers who I work with, it's 8. And then once in a while, it will go up to 10. It depends on the nature of the project. So, I'm not doing the 2 or 3 cents a word. And that sort of roughly works out. Like I would say the 5 or 6 cents a word works out with freelancers who work directly with me as well. That's sort of how much it comes to.
Mm-hmm. Do you find yourself getting better quality from freelancers or from the content marketplaces, or is it roughly similar?
I hire the freelancers for very specific content. So I would say if I assign that to Writeraccess, I'm probably getting better content with the freelancers because that's sort of what they're interested in and that's what they've written about in the past. So that's why I'm working with them. The other big benefit is I actually pay the freelancers hourly, and so they also do a lot of content updating. And they can do editing. And if you're paying someone by the word and then you ask them to go do a content update, well, they could spend hours and really only write 500 words. I mean, they're not going to do that, right? They're going to say, no, I can't do this. So that's worked out really well. There's it's a different arrangement that's working out quite well.
It's actually, it's a debate we've had a lot. I mean, we had to pay people hourly for content updates as well, because it's like per word, they just get screwed, basically. They just don't write that much. They need to research a lot. But paying freelance writers, specialized with freelance writers by hour rather than by word, I feel like you get better quality of content from what we've tried as well. Like they just care more, and so it's worked better for us. That's a lot of writers still. Like, do you use a project management tool? Like, how does it look like from the? Are you just doing their email, everything?
No, man, I've tried a few of them because I've read. I don't like them. I spent more time just setting it up, and then I did set it up, and then I'm working with VAs and everybody else, and they're just, I'm like, so what do you think? Is this working or not? And everybody's just like, I hate it. It's just too complicated. We're spending more time messing around trying to just manage the software than actually getting stuff done. I'm like, I 100% agree. Shut it down. I use personally, I use Apple Notes pretty much like.
That's good. I like it too.
Everything. It's instant. It's on all my devices. I can search. It's so fast. That manages a lot just for me. And then Google Sheets for everything else with everybody else. Just a ton of sheets, and everybody gets access to them, and that does the job. That's all I use, and then email. So
less is more. I recommend you check Craft Notes if you use Apple Notes. It's what I use to prepare the notes for this podcast, so you can check it out. But basically, it is basically like a native app for Apple, but like you have a few more options for like the images, etc. Like you can organize content a little bit more. Around. Yeah. And I quite enjoy it, but like it feels like a very native, minimalist app as well.
Nice. Yeah, I was just looking at the notes you provided, so yeah, looks good.
Okay, well. How does the review process for the content that arises work? I think you mentioned that you have a VA that checks it and now you're project manager, but like how much effort goes into that, and how often maybe you send content back for edits, etc.? Like how does the ping works basically?
Yeah, okay. So I actually work with a content manager at Writeraccess, which is it's a managed service. Okay, so they're the first level. Now, I don't know if they're doing a whole lot. Like they sort of just to check that the content is per the instructions provided. They're not really looking at writing quality. They're not paid to do that. So as long as the instructions are followed, she approves it. So then the VAs, they look more just for basically the formatting, which they've done on the site So they'll make sure the formatting's done, the internal linking is done and all that. And then in terms of the quality of the article itself, that's done with that the project manager I've recently hired, who goes through and makes sure that the articles, he knows exactly what I'm looking for and then vets it that way. And I'm still spot checking. I still spot check maybe once a week. I go through, I'm the only one who applies tags. I'm very, very particular about taxonomies and which articles get which taxonomies, particularly tags, because I have a lot of tags, but I use them methodically. So I'll apply the tags and I'll spot check content and make sure that the instructions are, that things are going the way I wanted them to go. So that's sort of the quality control. I think the quality control can be improved even further, like almost basically hiring a dedicated editor to actually review this stuff along the line. And that probably would be the next hire. Would be a full-time person who's like really combing through the content carefully, doing further edits, making it even better.
Yeah, so before you had that project manager, you were basically checking all of the content yourself, right?
That was me, yeah.
Yeah, so that must have taken a lot of your time, I guess.
Well, again, probably not as diligent in the quality control as I should have been. Yeah. How it goes. You kind of get fast. And the other thing is all the writers that first off with the writers, the freelancers that work direct, like their content is, I don't really check their content. Like it's, they know exactly what to do. They're doing a great job. So that doesn't really get vetted. And then Writeraccess, I work with the same 20 to 30 writers over and over. So again, they're pretty well versed with what I'm doing. I really pay close attention when new writers come aboard and comb through. But once they've been doing it and writing for my sites for several months, it's, they do a good job.
Yeah, I actually had that question in my notes that said, like, do you think done is better than perfect? But I think I got the answer, basically. It's like, I mean, you kind of need to output this level of content, but it's funny because I think we're on the other side and we're often paying for it. Like, we want to release like really good stuff, but what we pay for is in terms of how much stuff we release. So it's like, and that's why we tend to try to go for bigger keywords, which just change our strategy, etc. Because we can't just rank for like all these small keywords that you're going after, because it's like the amount of time we spend on each piece. And as a result, we have to like hit harder. And then when we go for higher keywords, we need better content because you won't rank without better content. And it's kind of that thing. So it's quite, it's like talking to you, I'm always thinking about like, should we rebalance things to like relax a bit and then just be able to output more volume? And, seeing from your main site is definitely something that we should be looking at.
It's a balancing act. I mean, like for instance, I actually do a mix. Like for instance, I started this series with one freelancer where the articles are 5,000 to 15,000 words. Like it's probably some of the best content, and it's highly researched. It takes her 40 to 50 hours to write one article. And so I'm trying that on one of my sites, and I'm really happy with it. The weird thing is the site, like I've shoveled content onto this thing and like these articles, and the traffic's still at a plateau. So I'm, fingers crossed I'm going to break through and that this stuff's going to start working. But so I am doing some of the stuff that you and Mark have always pretty much done for the years, like the really high quality, like thorough, extensive, well-written. And so I'm doing some of that as well. It's a mix. Okay. I tend to, again, it's where the freelancers, that would be more geared toward them rather than an outfit like Writeraccess.
I see. I guess you do similar to us. We split our content between like what we call main content and support content. Yeah. So what often happens is we do like main content, then we'll do keyword research from that piece of content. We'll essentially try to find the topics we mentioned and keywords related to that, and order the pieces that we wouldn't write otherwise to maybe freelance writers and things like that, and try to expand on that. So if we do link building to that main content, it just radiates to like 10, 12 pages and not just that one page, and try to get a better bang for our buck, pretty much.
It's a great strategy.
Yeah, it's kind of building a mini silo for each like epic piece of content, and trying to get more out of it, pretty much, rather than just that one page only.
Yeah, for sure.
My next question is, do you use on-page tools? because obviously they're like all the hype right now.
Yeah, it's amazing. I forgot that part of the workflow because it's actually very important. One nice reason or benefit of with a content manager at Writeraccess is I've implemented that all the writers now have login accounts to MarketMuse, and then they also use Ahrefs, and I use AnswerSocrates. I think it's AnswerSocrates.
I don't know this one actually.
It's sorry, I forget. It's like Answer the Public, but it's free.
Okay. Okay.
No, I think I got that wrong. Anyways, the point is they are.
No, it's that. AnswerSocrates.com actually. I'm on it right now.
Yeah, okay. It's a great site. It's like Answer the Public, but it's free for you're not cut off at 2 searches a day. So anyway, all the writers, even freelance Writeraccess regardless, are going to run content and keywords through all 3 of those software. And MarketMuse is particularly helpful. I think MarketMuse, I find, and it's like Surfer. I think what is it? SurferSEO or SEO Surfer?
Yeah,
very
similar, right?
Very, very similar. But the point is, it gives them a lot of guidance in terms of what the word count should be, various subtopics to include in the article, keywords to include, and so I think it helps them. It gives them a lot of guidance. And I'm not saying that if you score it really well with either of those tools that you're going to be guaranteed number 1 rankings. That's not the point of it. The point is that it's going to make it better. I believe that, but it also gives writers some guidance parameters with which to go about it, and I think it's helpful for them. I find it helpful when I write articles. Actually, I use it for myself. I just find it helpful. Again, I'm not naive to think I'm going to hit number 1 just because I'm using this stuff. I'm not the only one using it, but it's helpful. So that's part of the workflow for everyone. Anyone who produces a piece of content uses those 3 tools as well.
Do you set up the brief for them in the tool, or because usually you need to pick your competitors that is going to extract keywords from and things like that? I tend to like doing the briefs in SurferSEO, so I get to pick the competitors it's going to take for. So I don't pick competitors that seem to rank because they're really high DR, for example, or for other reasons than the quality of their content. And I try to focus on these pages to get the data from, and then I pick the keywords in there as well, so there's no bullshit stuff basically. And I tend to prefer doing that, and that's kind of how I do briefs for the writers. I do that, and I add the notes in the notes section basically. So I'm wondering if you do that or not.
No, I don't go to the extent that you do. Basically, what I do in the spreadsheet is I'll provide the keyword, usually it's a phrase, that they are to use in these tools, and leave it at that, and see what. Okay. So it's already fairly long tail, right? It's not a seed. It's long tail, pertinent to the article, and then so MarketMuse, you don't need to input competitors or any other info. You just put in that one phrase, and it'll spit out what you should do for that article. I try to keep it as simple as possible. I don't care to write briefs for every article I'm ordering right now.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, fair enough is the volume. See, that's the volume question I was asking. It's literally, we're going back to that. Are you screening for more content providers all the time? And what are you looking for with a content provider you'd be wanting to use regularly? How do you find them, basically? Yeah,
okay. It's a good question. I've used many content providers over the years, and I will use more. Writeraccess has sort of been this staple for years, and there have been times where I've stopped using them and use other people and so forth. So yeah, I'm always looking for a good content provider, and I will try. In fact, I'm doing a case study right now for FatStacks where I'm ordering the same topic from 37 different content providers.
Wow.
And I will provide the PDF of every article provided with the same instructions and the same keyword from every provider, and people can judge for themselves. This is what you get. This is how much it costs per word. And this is something I've been meaning to do for a long time. I did it with a few agencies, but I've never sort of gone through and literally found every content provider I could find on. I'm sure I missed some, but anyways, and then people can judge for themselves. Mentioning which content providers I use, especially the more service side where they have a set number of writers, it's hard because I mention it, and a lot of readers will go order from it, and they tell me they can handle
They
it,
get swamped.
but they can't handle it.
Yeah.
And then the service is garbage, and a lot of people are upset, and I don't blame them for being upset because it's a lot of money. And so, I could say Writeraccess confidently because they literally have, it's more of a broker. They have tens of thousands of writers, or at least thousands anyway. They can handle the volume. So what I thought I would do is like, here you go. Here's the 37 articles I got.
You decide,
You pick. Which one do you like the best for the rate, and leave it at that. So, but this is going to take me a few weeks to get out. I'm just waiting for all the articles right now.
We actually did that a long time ago, but only for like 10, I think, or something like that. And yeah, that was quite interesting. We've done that for link building providers, and that got us the most drama we ever got from Authority Hacker.
It got you.
It got us the most drama. Like, people basically were upset because we basically say, well, these links are not very good for a lot of them. It's like, didn't go so well. So I think I like the idea of like, you decide. And actually, this case study is interesting because we're doing another case study on Authority Hacker right now. Is going to bridge into our next topic, which is AI content. So right now we're actually doing a case study. Basically, the question we're asking, and we're working on this with Mark, is AI content now as good as shitty writers or like really bad writers? And could you replace this? And so like I have a blind video to shoot tomorrow, actually, where we ordered the same article from I think 2 or 3 star text broker, and the same article was also made on ConversionAI. And then the game is I have to pick which one is the best for each topic, and then we decide. And then we also do a survey and actually, if you want to participate, and we can include you in there, we can send you the articles, and you can actually tell us what you think. I don't know which ones are which. Mark is organizing, and the goal is going to establish if AI content can now match at least the low end of human writers. And so I wanted to know, have you tried this stuff, and what's your opinion on it? Because it's getting very popular these days.
Yes, I have tried it, and I think I agree with you that it's probably as good, and in some cases better, than really bad writing. So yeah, I think it's already at that stage because I've tried a handful of these tools. I think the potential is, I think it's going to eventually take over a lot of writing, and I think it's going to make the cost of content go down. But I also think there's still going to be some level, I suppose, of human involvement in terms of, some storytelling, perhaps, keyword selection, what topics you actually go for. Maybe in 20 years, it's not even going to matter anymore. I don't know, but like looking, in the near future here. So yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's obviously a huge disruptor to what we're doing. So we need to pay attention to it and adopt it and use it rather than ignore it.
Yeah, I think for a long time I was like, guys, it's not ready. But now I think we're getting to the point where it's starting to have proper practical uses. And it's like, I just checked one of the article, and I think I can tell which one is AI. But I actually think I like the one that's AI better than the one from the writer. And so, yeah, it's something that could really change. Like, what do you think is going to happen to the industry when AI content, like in 3 to 5 years, when AI content kind of like starts becoming something that will probably be more common, especially for your approach to like a long tail queries, right? Where probably is very low competition. And so this would be, even if your content is not perfect, this would probably be the place where you can start sneaking some traffic from this kind of like automated AI content, no?
Oh yeah, for sure. No question about it. I think it's going to be used extensively. It's hard to say, but I think it's going to have a major impact. And I think publishers are going to have to embrace it in some way. And I think we also have to wait and see how Google is going to treat it, right? And see what happens. I mean, what if Google comes out and says, listen, we are going to do our best to filter for AI content. Not that they're going to be able to, but they might. Or they might say, we're all about AI content. We're producing it, and
I was thinking about that. Do the content,
So I think I think there's just so many unknowns, but I think at the end of the day, I don't think Google's going to be able to ultimately filter for it because it's going to be indecipherable to, a lot of topics. And, perhaps the whole publishing model from the human standpoint is going to be almost exclusively in the realm of the influencer style of publishing, where people are going to, if you want to produce content, it's like the journalists on Substack. People go and they pay and they read because they want to read what they say. Like, AI content is not going to replace writers on Substack. That's not going to happen, right? That's a whole different level of writing. But for your bread and butter niche content type stuff, and so I think publishers, if they want to have the human side of the writing involved, are going to have to think of ways to be able to contribute something that AI can't do, and that but people still want. So, but it's going to be a disruptor for sure, big time.
Yeah, I think it's like self-driving cars, It's like it's kind of like on that level for content. So it's interesting. It's not ready yet, but I can see that in 2 to 3 years, we could be like getting quite deep into that, and it would like start being something that we use quite a lot, basically. To go back to your content production, is there any part of your content production I didn't cover in my questions, or like something that you do that we didn't talk about?
Well, my course goes into it a lot, but that's the keyword research process. That is so absolutely fundamental to what I do. I really seek out keywords where I think I have a reasonable chance of ranking without link building. I don't invest. So it looks like I invest a lot.
You don't do link building.
It looks like I invest a lot into content, and I do, but I also don't have a link building budget at all, right? Mm-hmm. It's all content, but that means I need to find the keywords that I can rank without investing in link building. So that's the difference, which means it all boils down to the keywords I go after is going to make a big difference whether content's going to succeed. So that's a huge part of it, and I'm constantly evolving my processes and trying to find angles to find really good keywords that are going to work well. But beyond that, once the topics are on the sheets and the writers take over, that's pretty much the workflow. What's been a difficult aspect to automate is internal linking is still a time-consuming process and very, very manual. It requires a manual effort rather than an automated effort. And
what do you use for that? Like, do you just do it manually?
Oh, yeah. I actually like the Ahrefs link opportunity.
I was going to say.
Yeah. That's helped a lot in terms of being able to hand a spreadsheet over to VAs to do it. And so they actually do that. But that's not perfect either. There are, bad opportunities listed, missed opportunities. So again, then I've really worked on instructing every level of people on how to find the most relevant articles that need to get linked to and from when we publish new content. And that's taken a while, but I think it's working well in terms of, basically having the team do that. But again, that's a tough part of the whole content, but a very, very important part. So
one thing with internal linking as well that I think almost nobody talks about is like, it's one thing to figure out how to build internal links, and usually you want to build internal links on your pages that would have the most links, etc. But as our sites age for us, there's pages that maybe used to be very important to us because we used to rank really high. Maybe that's not so much the case anymore. It happens, it cycles, And we still have like heavy internal linking to these pages, and we end up with like our best pages having a lot of links to pages that don't really matter to us that much anymore, and we're just leaking all that page rank to these pages that actually don't really make us money that much anymore. And so there's also, for us, one of the challenges is the cleanup as well, and kind of like identifying the pages that used to be important but are not so important anymore, and actually removing internal links so that the other internal links carry more weight for the pages that we actually care about. And it's, for me, that would be nice to have a tool for that too. Maybe some kind of like internal link ratio, something that tells you like how much traffic against how many internal links or something for the pages, so you can tell which ones you're like overly internal linked to, and maybe where you could redirect the page rank to, basically. But like that's something that we've been thinking a lot about actually recently.
That's an interesting topic. I am. What do they call that? Like sculpting, PageRank sculpting was the old term years ago. Yeah, I've read about that. I kind of take a different view about internal linking and taxonomies and entire website architecture. And my view is to make it as easy as possible for Google to basically crawl the entire site, which means I don't really mind if I have a high traffic article linking to a series of articles that are ever going to get a lot of traffic. I almost just view that, hey, the easier I make for Google to just crawl through the entire site, the better it's going to be for the entire site. And that's a big reason I use a lot of tags. Like for my largest site, I think I have about 250 tags, but each one will have at least 4 or 5 articles that apply to that tag, and some of them might have 30. So there's no one-offs, but I index these tag archives, which a lot of people would tell you not to do, but I do index them, and I index the category pages as well. And what that does is, and then I link from the home page to what I call, it's a manual, a nicer design of basically a sitemap. But instead of linking just to individual articles, I link to all the tags and the categories right from the home page. So I'm creating this very, very easy flow for Google to rip through basically my entire site. And that's what I do. I totally get the sculpting approach. Like that also makes sense. But this is, I heard a woman talk who was an in-house SEO for a large website at some conference. I've only been to one conference, at the only conference I ever went to. And it just made a lot of sense that she said to do this approach. And that just made a lot of sense. So it's what I've done.
I think honestly, like I'm not Google. I can't tell if it's better or worse. I think it makes sense. It also makes sense to do that. It's basically you're creating these category pages. It's nice because the tags, what you do is you have the anchor text as well. So you can give context through the anchor text to the tag page. And then like basically links from that page just link to relevant articles. So it's not too bad. We tend to, because we build, again, it ties back to how we build websites and how you're able to do large volumes of content. Because we build smaller sites, we tend to build custom category pages as well. Like we tend to build custom hub pages, etc. If you check the Automated system, like I show like how I build custom hub pages, etc. And so that's because our sites tend to be quite a bit smaller than yours as well. And so as a result, we can afford to micromanage these things a little bit more than you do. But I think for the size of the sites you build, there's no way I would have time to build 250 hub pages. So it totally makes sense. It's like it's just a more minimalist version of what we're doing on a larger scale, which makes sense for larger sites pretty much. Another thing that I wanted to mention, that we were talking about keyword research a little bit. I want to go back to it for a second, mostly because I wanted to talk about a topic that you do a lot of keyword research that I care a lot about recently, which is how unreliable keyword tools are these days and how bullshit the numbers are. We've basically been pushing the envelope more and more in the sense that we used to write, as I said, because we don't write that much content, we tended to pick like bigger keywords, but they were quite competitive. And it's like, sometimes we still felt it wasn't worth the effort. So we're like, okay, let's downgrade a bit. And now we're at the point where we're writing for keywords that have zero search volume in like Ahrefs or SEMrush or something like this and get thousands and thousands of visits per month, even though, and now we have this game of guessing keywords based on footprints, where we literally like identify some keywords that are big and just use our brain to be like, okay, if this works, if like, best bicycle for single leg people or something like that works, then maybe best bicycle for people who have one hand maybe works even though there's no search volume or something. And so you get the idea. We just try to guess keywords and it's been working really, really well for us. So I just wanted to know how you feel about the data you get from the keyword tools these days and kind of the evolution over the past 2 years when, there used to be this Ahrefs data from Avast antivirus that like SEMrush, Ahrefs, etc. used to get. And they don't get anymore. They stopped selling it for privacy concerns. And so like I feel like the quality of keyword tools has decreased a lot, but you do that a lot. So I wanted to know how you feel about this.
Yeah, well, because I have a different strategy than you, basically I focus on any keyword that will register as a keyword, I will go after, okay? If it shows 0 to 10 monthly search volume, I don't care. I'm totally good with that. As long as it picks up as a keyword. You know how when you search in Ahrefs, If it's not a keyword, it'll just basically say no data, right? There's no data for that,
Yeah.
right? So that's not a registered keyword. Does it necessarily mean I'd ignore it? If I would still think it's a worthwhile topic to cover, I'll do it. I wouldn't expect much from it. But if it picks up, even if it says 0 to 10 per month, I'm happy to grab that, because in my experience, it's going to be way more traffic than 0 to 10. Like, it's just the way it is. And so because I've noticed that in the past, it's like, well, these are still good keywords. They're actually searches. It's almost like the Google auto suggest keywords. If it picks up the phrase, it can be a 8-word phrase that it picks up when you're sort of typing in there. And that's a keyword to me. And it probably would register 0 to 10 in Ahrefs, but I don't care, because it's still a search. It's still searched by people, and probably more than is reported. So in fact, I filter out for like high difficulty, and just go straight for the really, really long tail, simpler stuff. And it's been working for me.
Yeah, essentially that's what we found as well. It's like something that we've done over the last few years, but I really feel keyword data has deteriorated quite significantly since this large amount of data sold by Ahrefs is not sold to keyword tools anymore. And it's kind of like, it's interesting because they still have all the historical data that was sold to them, but now this data is coming onto, in a few months, it's going to be 2 years actually, that they haven't received data from them anymore. And so like all the click data and all that stuff, for keywords, it's basically getting outdated at this point. And I'm not sure they have other data sources for this. So it makes me doubt even more what I see in the keyword tool. So it's kind of nice to hear that. I think you've been doing that for longer than us, but to hear you confirm that basically.
I always say that like Ahrefs and similar are guidelines. They're not, anything you could count on 100%. I get a lot of good ideas as well. Like I'll look at my own analytics and look at what's ranking and what's doing well. And I'll figure out a whole bunch of new topics to cover just based on topics that are already ranking, like that are very similar, but they're different search intent. So, it's still actually thinking about it. Like I can find like one good keyword, and then I'll be able to turn that just thinking about the topic into another 10 articles. So it's really a mix of the tools and just coming up with ideas on your own.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it's important because a lot of beginners who start with this, they tend to, treat what the data they get from these big keyword tools as gospel, where it's like, this is the truth, etc. Yeah. It's quite important to understand that the data is like, it's very, very, very rounded and quite often wrong, to be honest. When I look at like top pages in Ahrefs versus top pages in analytics, for example, it gets it about like 50 to 60% right. Yeah. But there's still like quite a bit that are missed, So it's like, you need to be a little bit careful. And the people who understand the limits of the tools tend to be the people who will be the smartest at picking topics as well. So I think it's from what I found. So I think it's quite interesting. I wanted to close this interview on going back to kind of like a broader or more open question. We talked about AI content, but in general, with things like bigger like publisher sites, kind of like traditional publishers getting more into the realm of building websites, and people like Dotdash also pushing in this industry, etc. I'd like to know what your vision is of this industry in 3 to 5 years. And do you still think it's going to be as easy to start websites as like small publishers, like most people who are listening to this podcast, and reach the level of success like you've achieved, for example, on your main site? Like, how do you feel about this whole direction of where we're going?
Yeah, I think whether it's more difficult to start or not, I think it's always kind of been the same. And the reason I say that is, yes, there's more competition always as more and more publishers get on board. But at the same time, now, like when I don't know about you, but when I started, like the mobile phone wasn't really a source of traffic, all right? Which meant like, as the phone has become so popular, like overall traffic and let's say page views in the world are probably like tenfold of what they were, 10 years ago. So there's a lot more audience and a lot more traffic. So, I view that as like, I still think it's a good opportunity. I think anybody's doing this, because I've got a FatStax forum where we've got a lot of people who are just starting out, and there are people who are getting great results in 12 months with the the similar strategy that I'm using. There's also people on there that do more of what you and Mark do, and they're getting good results as well, going for the higher search. So it's more competitive, but there's a larger audience out there, and I think it just boils down. Like literally, there are so many keywords. There's probably more keywords out there that haven't been covered, and that there isn't an article for, than there is. Like most websites tend to kind of cover the same stuff. The key is finding those topics that people haven't covered, and there are literally millions of them, and it's just billions. It's a matter of finding them, and that's going to give you a leg in. It's sort of like your big break. Once you start getting really good traffic for a particular topic to a new site, that sort of really helps cement and establish a site to grow from there, I've found. So it's just a matter of getting that first strike. So I think there's future potential. I think AI is going to be a disruptor. I really don't know how, but just as we were talking about it, I was thinking like, content like product reviews, for instance, I tend to veer from them. But is AI going to be able to do a review, say like the Wirecutter, based on their testing various products and going through it? I think there's a type of piece of content that is going to still require the human input, and there's going to be lots of those. And I don't do a lot of the review stuff, but I think that's just one example where you can distinguish the two. What? I also am excited about how high the valuations are for websites. Like it wasn't that long ago where like 25 was
25,
it was the industry standard, and now we're pushing. Like I got a 45 multiple on most of my sites when I sold them, which is pretty high up. I'm very happy with that type of multiple. I mean, that's almost like doubling the actual sale value of websites from not too many years ago, which goes to show that this is definitely a growing sort of industry, and a lot more money is getting poured into it. So
I agree. So it's kind of like also offsetting the difficulty, because it's like it's harder, but you also get paid out more when you make it work. So I agree with you. I think in terms of the AI content stuff, it's like I think it's going to just force people to level up their content to do, as you said, like add the value that the AI cannot add. But maybe low-level writers, they could be replaced, basically. I can see that coming.
100%. I agree with you there.
So I think that's what's going to happen. I think, when I talked about main content and support content, I could see your main content being this kind of like really high, well-crafted content, human-made, etc. And you just use AI to brainstorm all the subtopics and make some sub-pages below that and grab some traffic, I can see that strategy coming in for people to build sites. And it's nice as a site builder. You get to focus on like really cool projects for your content and build some cool stuff. And you have the AI do the rest, provided you can still make good money. I think it's gonna be a fun job, actually. So I'm all for it if it works out that way. Anything else that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover?
No, it was great questions. Got me thinking
Okay.
about what I'm doing, so appreciate it.
All right. Well, I guess it's a mini mastermind as well. Okay. Well, I just want to thank you for coming, and we are going to be putting a link to Jon's course below in the description, or in the description of the podcast if you're listening, so you can go check this out. And I want you to thank you for coming. I'm sure there will be a third podcast in not too long, because it's always great discussions when we talk. So thank you for coming, Jon, and we really appreciate. Have a good week, I guess.
Yeah, thanks very much, Gael. I enjoyed it.